Alright guys, so today we're going to be talking about a really cool fish, and this is a fish that I've caught thousands upon thousands of, and I think a lot of people growing up in the South at least, man, this is one of the first fish we learned to target because they're everywhere, and that's the largemouth bass. Now for me, catching a largemouth bass was something I did regularly growing up. I lived maybe 400 yards from a really nice little bass pond, and I would run down there and catch fish all the time. It was super cool. It was really just in an open field. It was covered in lily pads, but it taught me a lot about catching bass in heavy cover. And I mean, back when I was a kid, 10 years old, I'd be catching bass, I mean, all summer long, you know. So it was something I'm still in love with. I still love catching largemouth bass, and just everything about bass fishing gets me pumped. But what ended up happening was, way back then, I was maybe 10 or 11, and my dad had a fly rod, and this is before I even really fly fished, but he had an old fiberglass rod and some trout flies. And I remember going down to that dock, and I caught a few little bass off the dock there, and I thought it was super rad. I really wanted to learn about it. My dad had taken me into the yard to do some fly casting practice. He wasn't a big fly fisherman, but he was a big angler. He still loves fishing. But for him back then, it wasn't something like we've taken it now. So what ends up happening is I did catch some fish early on in my life on fly rod, and then I never touched it again for maybe 10 years until I was about 22 years old, 10 years ago, and I just got obsessed with it right after college. So what happened was, I remember being at work. I used to manage a Domino's pizza and on the UCF campus in Orlando, and my brother sends me a photo on my phone of him with this giant largemouth bass, and I'm going, this is freaking crazy. Where did he catch us? And it's nighttime, and he's like, oh, you know, my girl was jogging, and I decided to go down to the park with her and bring the fishing rod, and in this retention area ends up catching this huge bass. I'm like, dang, that's pretty sick. I'm gonna come fish with you, obviously, as soon as I can. So I ended up going over there. It wasn't the next night or anything like that, but maybe a week later, and we go out at night. It's pitch black. I mean, just, you couldn't see anything, and there were a few lights around this retention area, so like those were key spots at night where those fish would come to eat. And you had multiple culverts running into the retention area too, so like, man, we come in, we're sneaking around because there were signs everywhere not to fish or whatever. Well, we get in there, and I was throwing an old 7 weight I had, and I had tied some long, really long chenille worms, which just mimics like a rubber worm, and they're great for bass. So this thing was really shallow. It was a retention pond, right? So it wasn't dug out deep or nothing. It was maybe 3 foot deep, 4 foot deep, all the way across the thing. And you can make a big, huge cast and not even get close to crossing. So I get out there, and I was making really long casts and just pulling it along the bottom. And there was some junk in it, like tree limbs and stuff, but for the most part, there's no cover. It was just sand bottom. So all the fish stacked up on culverts, on the lights, very predictable areas at night. We're not fishing 20 minutes, and I'm stripping this thing in, and just feels like someone drops a bowling ball on my strip. It's boom, and I hook up to this bass, and it's freaking going nuts. And I knew it was a good fish right away. And to this point, I'd caught some good bass on fly. Wasn't anything like this one. This one was probably 8 pounds. It was a pig, and I know I got a photo of this one, so it's going to be in this video. It's probably on Facebook or something. And I ended up catching 2 really big bass that night on the fly, and I was so pumped. I remember going back to work or something and being like, dude, check this bass out, you know? And I still haven't caught a bass that big since. it's been 5 years now. I've been spending most of my time in Costa Rica, so bass fishing, largemouth bass isn't something I do super regularly anymore. But man, it's just so pumped to be able to get that fish when I did with my brother at night doing some ninja stuff. I mean, those are the types of experiences that you go into thinking this can make or break anything. You know a cop's gonna come by, you're gonna get a ticket, or in this case, no cops came by, we ended up catching some huge bass. So it was like all that combined makes for just such a rad fishing experience for me, and those are the types of things that I love doing. So that's it, guys. Catching a big old fat daddy largemouth bass on the fly, and it ended up getting 2 that night, so I was just super pumped. If you fish bass, man, comment below, let me know. Send me some pictures, email, hit me up on Instagram, Backwater Fly Fishing. Send me some photos, some big old bass. It's not something I get into too much because right now, kind of my life's been focused around saltwater, but there's nothing I like more than a big bass pick. So shoot it in, guys, and I'll catch you guys next Monday with another story where we try and tell fish stories without lying too much. And that's it. Deuces.